Today we're going to talk about the step you're probably missing before you actually dive into the mix itself. So this step is surgical cleaning EQ. So what this is diving into the mix, into the individual tracks inside of the mix, and finding and removing resonant frequencies and just unnecessary noise that's inside of each of these tracks before we start mixing. The critical aspect of this step is that we don't want to leave any of these nasty resonant frequencies inside of the mix before we actually get to the next steps, because once we start compressing these tracks, those resonant frequencies that already exist inside the tracks are just going to be emphasized even more. And these resonant frequencies are really not part of the sound of the instrument. They're just sounds of possibly the room they were recorded in, or just nasty digital noise that somehow got its way into the recording. That's what we're trying to remove today inside of our mix before we move on to the next step, which is actually diving into the mix itself. Part of this series that I'm doing, I also created 2 different guides for you to help you out as you're moving forward in your journey of mixing systematically. So the first one is going to be an EQ guide, which gives you all of the basic understanding of where the areas of interest when you're EQing each and every single instrument. This is just a guideline, but it also gives you some tools that you can use to understand what's actually wrong with your instruments and your tracks as you're diving into EQing various instruments. And then the second guide is a guide on compression. This is basically a 101 guide on what compression is and how to use it effectively. It goes through the 4 styles of compression so that you can understand exactly what I'm talking about throughout this series. So make sure you pick up both of those guides. You can find the link right below this video, or you can go to mastering.dinosaurdogstudio.com. With that said, let's dive into exactly how to find and remove these resonant frequencies inside of our tracks. So what we have here is just a song that I've organized and set up for the mixing process. I do have a rough static mix on this already. Normally I don't actually go ahead and do the static mix until the next step, but just for the sake of being able to listen to the song so you have some context on what we're dealing with, I went ahead and did the static mix on this song in particular before we actually dive into the cleaning EQ, which is what we're doing today. I'm just going to play a couple seconds of this song for you so you can get some sort of context of what we're actually doing here, and then we'll dive into our actual cleaning EQ and what we're doing. Pretty basic arrangement. It's got some drums, it's got some horns, guitars, etc. In terms of cleaning EQ, what we're really trying to go for is look at all of our tracks and remove all of the unnecessary noise in all of them. So we're going to be looking at a lot of high and low pass filters to remove a lot of top and low end, mostly low end, to prevent our mix from being just muddy and getting some more clarity in that low end early on. And then also focusing on resonant frequencies. So what resonant frequencies are is generally frequencies that exist inside of the room that you recorded in that aren't actually a part of the sound of the instrument. Generally these are identifiable because they are frequencies that exist in the sound regardless of what note is actually being played. It's usually kind of this ringing sound that you'll hear that you can then cut out of the sound, and then it shouldn't really shape the tone of the instrument. It can if you get really aggressive with it, but generically we're not trying to impact the tone. We're just trying to bring out what's actually the real sound of the instrument and remove any of the unnecessary noise. And I want to start with the acoustic guitar because it's normally the easiest to identify some of these resonant frequencies. There are generally quite a few in acoustic guitars. They're just kind of one of those instruments that is very prone to picking up that. My approach to finding these resonant frequencies is getting a narrow band and then listening to the actual source audio. See if I can identify them just by listening to it. So maybe some areas of the frequency spectrum that aren't necessarily clear. And then I take my band and I sweep around in that area to try to identify it. I don't just go ahead and before listening to it just start sweeping around, because when I sweep around, if I shove it up to 20 decibels of added volume in any one area, it's going to sound terrible. And so I really want to listen to it, figure out what the issues are before I actually dive into finding what the actual specific resonant frequency is that I'm trying to remove. Yeah, so immediately you can see there's a lot of this low end frequency energy down here that we do not need. So I'm gonna go ahead and high pass this. The approach that I use here is I'm just going to drag it up until I feel like the guitar loses any of its low end energy, kind of the power behind it, and then I'm gonna back it off just a little bit. So I wanna take off as much as I can without actually impacting the tone of the guitar itself. Okay, so that sounds pretty good to me. I just want to take out the very low stuff. I'm not trying to adjust the tone, so please keep that in mind when you're going through and doing this. Now let's listen to it, see if we can find some of those obnoxious resonant frequencies. Yeah, so I'm definitely hearing something around this 1 kilohertz. Yeah, so this is a great example of a resonant frequency. You might think that right here, this around the actual 1 kilohertz might be a resonant frequency, but it's actually a note of part of the chord of this guitar. So we don't actually want to take that out because we're just going to be removing the complexity and characteristics of the chord itself. So right here above it, where we just had our band, is a resonant frequency. You can tell it doesn't actually belong in the chord, and it's just kind of nasty. It's just ringing out there. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about resonant frequencies. Yeah, so there's another one. You can tell that it's just kind of ringing out there. It's not part of the chord. It's just kind of some nasty stuff. So let's take those out, and then we'll A/B this really quick just so you can hear what the difference is. So here's without. And here's with. So you can really hear that I'm really not changing the tone at all of the guitar. It's just becoming a little bit more clear and sounding more like a guitar and less like a recorded guitar. Let's go ahead and capture the rest of these guitars. I'll move a little quicker here. So I'm noticing that in all these low guitars or acoustic guitars, we're finding that same resonant frequency right around 800 kilohertz or 800 hertz, excuse me. And that's pretty common because this guitar was recorded in the same room. That same room resonance is going to be apparent in every single one of these tracks. So definitely finding that to be the case here. You can oftentimes speed up your process of cleaning EQ when you know if something's recorded in the same room, just to look in the same spots or listen for that same issue in each track. I wouldn't recommend usually blindly applying things across the board because you can run into issues of removing frequencies that weren't actually an issue. So always make sure that it's an actual issue before you actually try to fix it. Otherwise, you're just going to be removing audio information that you actually want inside of your mix. So let's move on to the electric really quick. Okay, so this is a good example. Same issue, right? There's gonna be some mud down here with this electric guitar. But the other thing I wanna show you is that even though this guitar was not recorded on a real amp in a real room, there still could be some frequencies that we want to really get surgical on and remove. And this one in particular is there's a little bit of like harshness in the 3K range that I really don't like. This is very common with simulated amps, so just be aware of that. But the other side of it is that you don't wanna remove too much with especially distorted electric guitars, because you could just remove all of the character out of the guitar itself, because all of those nasty distorted frequencies is part of what the guitar actually is. So we want to remove what's really harsh and grating, but not what is just character that is still kind of nasty, but part of the sound of the guitar. Use with caution on electric guitars. Let's go to the vocals, because the vocals is another area that's often a big issue with these resonant frequencies.
Flowing like a river, we're coming back to life. Reaching towards the light, your love is like springtime. Flowing like a river, we're coming back to life. Reaching towards the light, your love is like springtime. Flowing like a river, we're coming back to life. Flowing like a river, we're coming back to life. Reaching towards the light, your love is like springtime. Flowing like a river, we're coming back to life. Reaching towards the light, your love is like springtime. Flowing like a river, we're coming back to life. Reaching towards the light, your love is like springtime. Flowing like a river, we're coming back to life. Reaching towards the light, your love is like springtime. Flowing like a river, we're coming back to life. Reaching towards the light, your love is like springtime. Flowing like a river, we're coming back to life. Reaching towards the light, your love is like springtime. Flowing like a river, we're coming back to life. Reaching towards the light, your love is like springtime. Flowing like a river, we're coming back to life. Reaching towards the light, your love is like springtime. Flowing like a river, we're coming back to life. reaching towards the light. Your love is like springtime, flowing like a river.
Okay, so there's our vocals. So that's pretty much it for cleaning EQ. I'm gonna go ahead and do the rest of this really quick, but I won't make you watch me do it. Watch out for the next video. The next video is going to be actually doing the static mix. So this one already has a pretty rough static mix on it, but I'm going to go through in detail and show you exactly how to get a really good static mix before you dive into processing the mix bus on EQ and compression there. Look out for that, and I'll see you then.